is a book about a successful intelligence operation. The war in Afghanistan, or more properly, the war against the Soviet 40th Red Army in Afghanistan, that began on Christmas Eve, December 1979, and ended in December 1979, ended in February 1989 with the retreat of Soviet forces across the Amur River back into the Soviet Union, was a global game changer. One part of that is pretty obvious. The war ended the myth of the invincibility of the Soviet army. From 1942 on, the Soviet Union had never lost a battle. The perception was the Red Army was invincible. It was not. It was defeated in Afghanistan, and to add insult to injury, it was defeated by basically illiterate Afghan tribesmen assisted by the United States Central Intelligence Agency. The Soviet Union would probably have collapsed at some point anyway, but the Afghan war turns out to have been a precipitating event in making that happen. The book is organized to look at the different players in the war, starting with the Afghan communists and then the Soviets. The Russians made almost every conceivable bad decision you could make in this war, beginning with the intervention to start it, which the CIA completely was surprised by. The Soviet Union put in about 100,000 soldiers to win the war in Afghanistan. In contrast, when it went into Czechoslovakia in 1968, they used 500,000 men. Now, anyone who looks at the map of Czechoslovakia and Afghanistan is going to see that the place where you needed 500,000 men was not Bohemia and Moravia, but the mountains of Afghanistan. Pakistan, and particularly its intelligence service, the ISI, was the general headquarters of the Mujahideen. It provided the leadership, it provided the strategy, it provided the tactics. And if this war was anyone's war, it was Zia-ul-Haq's war. Zia-ul-Haq was, of course, the military dictator of Pakistan in the 1980s. He is the person who made every critical decision about the war. I know you all think it was Charlie Wilson's war. It wasn't. It was Zia-ul-Haq's war. The other key outside player was the Saudis. The Saudis matched our $4 billion dollar for dollar in government funds. That's well known. What's less well known is that they raised private funds as well. Rich Saudis donated enormous amounts of money to the war. Again, it's hard to know how much, but probably at its peak, Saudi private donations amounted to about $20 million a month going to the Mujahideen. President Carter was caught off balance by the Soviet invasion, but within 2 weeks, Jimmy Carter devised the strategy that the United States would pursue for the rest of the war, and he assembled the coalition of states to support it. Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, China, which was a key supporter of the war effort, Egypt, and the United Kingdom and others. All were brought together.
Who killed Zia?
Zia's death, he died in the crash of a C-130, just having left a demonstration of the new American main battlefield tank, a demonstration which was a complete disaster. The tank didn't work, and it missed the target when it shot at it. He died in the crash of a C-130 leaving there. It is an open question whether it was an accident or sabotage. I think it was probably sabotage. Zia had so many enemies. Chinese were a critical player. The Chinese not only provided a lot of the armaments that the Mujahideen used, because after all, China produced Soviet-style weapons. So a Chinese-made AK-47 looks a lot like a Soviet-made AK-47. Zbigniew Brzezinski deserves credit for bringing the Chinese into this effort, although they might have come on their own anyway. But he saw the Chinese as a critical player. One other thing, the Chinese weapons were universally regarded by the Afghans as the best quality weapons they got. The weapons that they got from Egypt, they regarded as the worst quality weapons that they got. The Chinese did it because by 1979, the Sino-Soviet split had gone so far that it wasn't, there was no Chinese affinity anymore for the Soviet Union. They wanted to see Russians get killed too. They may not have wanted to see communism come to an end, in which case the war had unintended consequences for them too, just like it had for us.